Hello and thank you for joining us today. I'm Paul Stover, President of the OC Forum, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to providing a civil public space focused on events that impact our community. Our goal is to facilitate extraordinary programs with visionaries, connections, conversations, and solutions. On behalf of the entire OC Forum Board, we'd like to thank you for joining us for the Future of virtual program series made possible by presenting sponsors UCI and UCI Health. With the support of all our generous sponsors and viewers like you, the OC Forum has been able to provide great virtual conversations with completely open access to the entire community. If you are able, we would appreciate your donation or membership so that we may continue to provide these timely programs. We look forward to your continued partnership as we celebrate the OC Forum's 30th anniversary throughout the year. Because without your support, our public service programming simply would not be possible. Thank you again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy today's program. And don't forget to have a great OC Day.
At UCI, we believe in the infinitely curious. We believe in the courageous of thought, the ones willing to fail again and again until one day they don't. When you have the courage to see things differently, to see opportunity where others see impossibility, amazing things will happen. At UCI, we stop at nothing to change the world, to save lives and deliver the extraordinary.
Hi, I'm Sarah Catz. I'm a member of the Orange County Forum Board of Directors, and I'm your moderator today. As most of you know, the Orange County Forum is Orange County's premier public affairs organization. I'll be introducing our first guest today, who's Darrell Johnson. He's the CEO of the Orange County Transportation Authority. We also call that OCTA. Good afternoon, Darrell.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for accepting. You and I have been in the transportation industry for most of our adult lives. I think we met over 20 years ago when you were at Amtrak. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about your career and how you got all the way to be CEO of OCTA?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. You're right. I think we met 20, 22, 23 years ago. In fact, I think August of this year will be 29 years of professional transportation work for me.
Wow.
Student at UC Riverside. I studied political science and business, and I got into transportation because I thought it made our community better. And 29 years later, I still think transportation makes our community better. I had a wonderful opportunity to join a leadership development program at Amtrak based out of Washington, D.C. in the early 90s. And that took me around the country to Los Angeles and to Northern California. And I think that's where I met you in the late 90s, and always had an eye on OCTA. I thought it was an innovative organization and had the opportunity to come to OCTA in 2003. So 17 years ago, thought I would be here for a year or two working on streets, roads, highways, and rail, but I really fell in love with the opportunities that Orange County provided in terms of being part of a really big mega region and the challenges we had here in Orange County on surface transportation. We really get to do a lot of everything, as you know, in transportation. And for the last 7 years, have been fortunate to serve as the CEO and a lot of really cool things have been underway in the last decade at OCTA with Measure M2, the 405 Express Lanes, OC Streetcar, and another just abundance of projects. So very happy to be here, very happy to be working on behalf of the residents of Orange County trying to solve our transportation problems.
Well, I remember being so excited when I saw that you had made the transition from Amtrak to the OCTA. So thank you for all you've done for Orange County. Thank you for coming to Orange County. And I'm excited for everyone to hear about some of the projects you're working on. Let's first talk about what's on everybody's mind. With the pandemic forcing millions to shelter at home, what does the future of mobility look like in Orange County? And how has transportation changed since the shelter at home order on March 19th?
You know, Sarah, it's so much has changed since that shelter at home order. In fact, I'd even sort of rewinded a couple of weeks. We executed our crisis communications plan and emergency operations plan the week of February 27th. And maybe we were a little early or a little conservative in that. But as a public transit provider, when we heard about infectious diseases, you know, we went right to this idea of our buses every day. And so we really took that very seriously. And when that stay-at-home order went into effect, we began transitioning very quickly. Middle of March, we reduced our bus service by 60%. Ridership had fallen 75%. And we went into a number of things to try to balance the safety of our riders with the safety of our operators and drivers. Things like temporarily having people board through the rear door, installing hand sanitizer stations on the rear of every bus, cordoning off the front seats so people would not be sitting next to the operators. We went through and began a nightly antibacterial, antiviral wipe down process on every bus every night. Things that were simple before, getting face coverings, getting sanitizer, supply chain issues and challenges, but we've issued to every coach operator early on, basically a care package, if you will, of face coverings, sanitizing wipes, hand sanitizer, gloves, all of those types of things we put in place right away. And, you know, I would also note, you mentioned how long we've been in transportation. We've spent our entire career trying to fill buses and trains with as many people as possible. This has really changed. Now we're spending our time trying to figure out how to make sure there's enough distance between people, right? So it's a complete shift of how we go about transportation. But at the same time, recognizing there's a lot of people that need our public transit services to get to their daily essential functions, even during the stay-at-home orders. So we were carrying 120,000 people a day. That dropped to 35,000 people a day. But when you think about those 35,000 people a day, they really had to go somewhere important if they were willing to essentially risk their lives to go outside during that the early pandemic piece. You know, the other thing, though, besides public transit, is we work on capital projects. And I think everybody listening today probably knows that suddenly freeway traffic evaporated overnight. The things that we were experiencing on the 5 or the 405 or the 55 or the 91, they just went away. Traffic was non-existent. So we, in conjunction with Caltrans District 12 here in Orange County, immediately started doing daytime lane closures on projects that we had, like the 405, like the I-5. And when we look back, we were able to gain nearly 10,000 hours of additional work time on our 405 improvement project. You know, it's not going to make the project get done in a year sooner, but 10,000 hours is a significant amount of work. We're working on the OC Streetcar in downtown Santa Ana. We were very concerned about impacting businesses. Well, when those businesses closed, we could work 24 hours a day on water line relocation, sewer line relocation. So a number of issues there have been very positive. Maybe one other thing, just we don't think about, the court systems were closed. And in capital project construction, we often have to buy property. That sometimes involves the court system. So trying to buy property and going through the courts, that's a very difficult issue. In fact, the courts were closed. So we've seen some delays in areas like that. So ridership on public transit, very challenging. Accelerating of capital projects, but then some administrative things really slowed projects and progress down. So a wide variety of things have changed in the last 120 days.
Well, I'm incredibly proud of what you and your team and your board have been able to accomplish. To that end, you anticipate having to cut any programs or jobs in the next fiscal year?
We've taken a really, really hard look at our budget. And prior to the pandemic, we had a budget proposal that was in the neighborhood of $1.6 billion for the upcoming fiscal year. We had to take some very difficult decisions, revisit that. We cut about $200 million out of that. The board did approve a $1.4 billion balanced budget earlier this month. And it focused on a couple of things. One is we wanted to make sure that anything we had started, we could see through. So if it was a capital project like the 405 or the I-5 in South County, OC Streetcar, we wanted to make sure that we could continue working on that. At the same time, we want to be very cautious on starting any new initiatives or any new programs or projects that we're a little unsure of. So we took a very conservative approach. We added no new positions to the budget. In fact, we've frozen 20 to 25 existing positions. No merit or special award for any of our professional staff. We curtailed travel significantly, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we had dollars available for cities, for streets and roads, pavement repair, pothole repair. We think that's very important. On the bus side, the Federal CARES Act, which was signed into law in late March, provided just under $160 million for OCTA for bus service. Huge help. And that's going to allow us to budget for a full level of bus service going over the next year. We may not run it all based upon passenger demand and public safety, but we have the ability to do that. Right now, not planning any reduction in force or any layoffs or any program cancellations. One of the reasons we're able to do that is our board in the past, and I think the way we manage, we've been very, very prudent in our financial planning. What we're doing today, we're not dipping into reserves. We don't have to do that. They're planned use of expenditures, but we've always been very conservative in a very strategic approach to how we look at all of our programs. So we're in a good position. The board should be commended for its sort of restraint in recent years of not, pursuing new projects with one-time funds. Very, very focused on making sure that we can live within our means, and those decisions are paying off today.
You all truly need to be commended because it's fantastic. I don't know if you've been talking to any of your colleagues at other transportation agencies, but are they also in as good a position as OCTA is?
I think I don't want to speak for others, but I think I would say we are more unique than others. OCTA is really a collection of 7 public agencies and a multitude of budgets. We have no debt on our bus service program. Everything is cash, pay as you go. That's very unique in the transit world. Same thing in our contributions to Metrolink. No long-term debt, no short-term debt. Our debt on the 91 express lanes is very small. In fact, we have enough reserves that we could pay that off. And the way we've structured our Measure 2 sales tax debt is very conservative. And again, not speaking for other transportation agencies around the state or around the region, but I think the way we manage our finances is very unique, and it's probably not the norm.
Well, congratulations. You had mentioned Measure M, and I'm hoping you can explain to those who are listening, because maybe not everybody knows what Measure M is, but explain what Measure M is, and let us know how far sales tax revenues have fallen since March 19th, and what economic experts are saying about how long it might take to recover.
Sure. So we're in Orange County. We're very fortunate that in 1991 and again in 2006, the voters found it acceptable to tax themselves for transportation. So we have a half-cent sales tax. Began in 2011. It goes through 2041. It's known as Measure M2. And that half-cent sales tax really is what allows us to have the transportation system that we have in Orange County. I think it's well known that we have well-maintained freeways. We have a big capital program. We have the highest quality streets and roads at local cities anywhere in any county in California, and that's all due to Measure M2. But with that, we live and die by sales tax collections. The traditional state and federal sources are very important for transportation funding, but most of our investment comes from Measure M2. And it has been a significant impact since the stay-at-home order. In fact, we don't do our own sales tax forecasting. We use a combination of 3 universities plus a sales tax forecasting firm. And from mid-March to the end of the fiscal year, which is just in a couple weeks, June 30th, we're expecting a 33% decline in taxable sales. State numbers indicate about 25 to 27%. We spend more in Orange County per capita than the rest of the state on average, so we're a little bit higher there. We expect to end the fiscal year collecting about $300 million in sales tax, which is a lot of money, but that's down from what we thought we were going to collect by about 10%. Looking next year, we had forecasted to collect about $350 million in Measure M sales tax. We now think that's going to drop to $283 million. So that's a 20% decline. That's a $71 million evaporation overnight. And when you sort of project that forward, depending upon the recovery, is it a short recovery? We talk about the L-shaped recovery or the V-shaped recovery or the W-shaped recovery or the Nike swoosh-shaped recovery. We'll see how that goes, but it can carry forward. The good news is I mentioned earlier is we've had very strong financial planning in every aspect of our Measure M2 sales tax program. The staff has recommended and the board has approved a large set aside for economic uncertainty. And so instead of committing those dollars to a new project or an expanded scope of an existing project, we've set those aside to say, hey, something might happen. And I think we know that from our experience in Orange County with the bankruptcy in the mid-90s and then the Great Recession in the 08-09 timeframe. I was here at a senior management role at OCTA in the Great Recession. It was hard. And so I think the last decade, that is always in the back of our mind about how do we prepare for that again? And it's sort of, it's paying off for us now. With that said, I have asked our staff to initiate what I call a strategic review and assessment of all of our future sales tax programs and projects. We need to make sure we're doing the right thing. We need to make sure that we're prudent, and we need to make sure we're thinking about when we do it and how we do it and how much it will cost when we do it. And that's underway now. I suspect we'll talk about that more publicly in the fall as we get a sense of how sales taxes recover. But I think what's important there, Sarah, is that we're not just pretending the future is the same as it was, in 120 days ago. There's no question in my mind that it's a different future, and we have to be prepared for that different future. Even if it's hard, we have to address it head on and figure out how we're going to keep our promise to the voters under Measure M.
Fantastic. Okay, so once we recover, and I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later, what does the future look like in terms of micromobility, autonomous vehicles, hydrogen, electric buses, those kind of programs, the fun stuff?
The fun stuff?
Yeah.
Well, a couple things. I think let's maybe talk about transit first and then maybe non-transit second. I think on transit, we're going to have to figure out how we give people more space for the foreseeable future. This idea that we're going to pack everyone next to each other and try to have a heavy load factor and fill every seat, I think we're not going to see that for a while. Even if there is, the virus is under control or maybe there's a vaccine at some point, the comfort level with people in that environment, whether it's on a transit bus, a light rail vehicle, or a commuter rail train, I think they're going to be concerned about that. So I think we're probably going to spend more money to do the same service. And I think we have to think through that process. We're probably thinking a lot more about things like operator safety and shields and touchless or contactless payment, things that were nice to haves in the past, but are probably going to be more required in the future. The other thing, shifting away from transit, is we've seen a massive shift to people that can work remotely to do work remotely. What was sort of viewed as maybe a luxury in the past is really, the switch is flipped, I think, for many people. We're involved in Metrolink. Metrolink, we know from past years, has said most of the riders, 80% or more, have access to a personal automobile. So working with Metrolink, we've done some survey data, and they've said, I might come back to the train, but I might just be able to work at home. My business has changed. My boss said I could work at home. And on the OCTA side, we made a lot of investment in technology, cloud-based computing over the last few years. That has allowed us to, within about a 24-hour period, shift more than 500 of our professional staff to working remotely, using Microsoft Teams, using Skype for Business, and we haven't missed a beat on that. And we did that crisis planning because we thought there might be a fire or a flood or an earthquake in our future. We didn't think it would be a public health crisis, but that good planning has really helped. And I see a lot of that happening to the broader workforce going forward. And I hope that as a transportation entity, we can help incentivize that in some way, because every trip that's not made on a freeway or on a bus is a trip that can be at home. That's going to be helpful from the overall congestion activities around the county.
Darrell, we've pretty much run out of time, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here with us today. I just wanted to wrap up with one question, and that was, a couple of weeks ago, the forum held a very important discussion on the future of race relations. And when I was on the board of directors of OCTA, I was very proud of the social justice and diversity best practices at the agency. And I just wanted to know if you could, I know it's very quick, but can you give us your thoughts about the agency and social justice measures going forward?
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. In fact, I held a virtual town hall with our coach operators and maintenance mechanics last night, and this, as you might expect, came up. 70% of our OCTA workforce comes from underrepresented groups, and we serve a population in Orange County that in many instances is underrepresented. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. Diversity and inclusion is part of everything that we do. When I became CEO, we joined COMTO, which is the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, largely involved in the historically Black colleges and universities. We did that because it was the right thing to do, not because somebody told us to, not because someone pressured us to do that. Some of the things that we're going to change going forward is we're going to sort of raise our issues around unbiased or unconscious bias in all of our training and development. And as I told our coach operators last night, I don't have any problem saying that Black Lives Matter. It's important to us, and we need to make sure that we're thinking through that. And everyone deserves equal opportunities on public transit, to jobs, to education, to quality healthcare. And that's our job as a public transit provider, is to focus on that and make sure that there is social equity, social justice, and equality across the services we provide.
That was beautifully articulated. Thank you again, and congratulations again to you, your staff, and your board on the fabulous job you're doing for everybody in Orange County.
Great. Well, thank you, Sarah, and thanks for your dedication to OCTA and to transportation in Orange County. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you. Our next speaker, whose last name is also Johnson, but there's no relationship, is the interim CEO of the Transportation Corridor Agencies, which we refer to as TCA. Samuel Johnson first joined TCA in 2015 as the Chief Toll Operations Officer, and he was recently named interim CEO, I think just a month or two ago. Welcome, Samuel.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the OC Forum for inviting me.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to the TCAs and your interest in transportation.
Sure. I've been at TCA just over 5 years, and I'm happy to bring what I consider to be a pretty well-rounded transportation career and associated perspectives to our agency and the tolling. I was educated as an accountant. I never wanted to be an accountant, but I knew that degree would keep me gainfully employed, which it did. But I spent most of my career working in technology. Prior to TCA, I spent a couple of decades working down in the San Diego region with the various transportation agencies that perform functions there. I started with the Metropolitan Transit Development Board, the folks who reignite the growth of light rail and the red trolleys down there. So I got a chance to see how those thoughts are formed, projects are planned and implemented. I also got to spend some time working at San Diego Transit, a large transit operator, and understanding, the nuances of delivering fixed route bus service, as well as paratransit. Then I finished up the majority of my career in San Diego, working for the San Diego Association of Governments, a very large agency that deals not only with comprehensive transportation planning, but also with quality of life and public safety. And during my tenure at these various agencies, as I mentioned, I worked in technology. That wasn't just general technology. I also got to work on some pretty cool stuff, what us transportation geeks call intelligent transportation systems. So I got to work on some really cutting edge things, learning about everything from how you do traffic light, how you manage ramp meters, how you deploy contactless smart cards for transit operations, satellite tracking, and even the early stages of what we're now seeing come to fruition, autonomous vehicles. So I got to dabble in a lot of cool and interesting stuff, technology-wise, to see how we can move the needle and improve our capability to manage congestion. But I think more importantly than that, I really got to learn about the complex puzzle and all the pieces that are needed to make transportation work for everybody. So I think that was all very fruitful. Also, while I was at Sandag, I spent some time managing our transportation demand management program and trying to get folks to carpool and vanpool, which is definitely a lot harder today. But then also, I spent a lot of time trying to talk businesses to telework, conveying that value, which is definitely a lot easier today. So things change. And during my time at Sandag, that's when I first got into tolling. And I learned what sustainable transportation meant, not only from a fiscal perspective, but also from a congestion management and equity perspective. I spent the last few years of my career at Sandag managing acquisition of the State Route 125 toll road down in Chula Vista. It was previously run by a private venture, and Sandag made the decision that that was an asset best managed by a public agency. So we acquired that asset, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to oversee that transition, make sure our operations and our plans aligned with board policies and what we wanted to accomplish as a region. Through my career, I've also been fortunate to have been in some key leadership roles. I served as the chair of the California Toll Operators Committee, which is comprised of the 13 agencies throughout the state responsible for tolling. We're a very collegial group, and we work with the big hat on, where we focus on what's best for California, not necessarily just what's best for San Diego versus Orange County versus LA, so forth. So I was very fortunate to be in that role. I also served on the Alliance for Tolling Interoperability, which is a national group focused on how do we expand, concepts like we have in California, where a customer can use their account to pay for tolls anywhere in the state. So we can go to that next step where now a customer can use their California account to pay for tolls in Colorado or Washington, and vice versa. So that's been exciting. And then I'm definitely proud to currently be the president of our International Trade Association, IBTTA, the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association, because that's truly an amazing organization with broad reach. We have over 250 members that expand across 26 countries and 6 continents. So it's a great way to get information and to generate thought leadership about what we're doing in the industry. Since joining TTA, I've been very proud to become part of South Orange County's amazing story. And I really do think it's an amazing story here that's focused around self-determination and self-reliance. The decisions our city leaders and the county made back in the 1980s, created a transportation network here in Orange County that's incredible. I think we all can agree that Orange County, and especially South Orange County, is an amazing place to live and an economic engine. And that's definitely driven by our transportation network. So the combination of the things we've done with tolling, as an example, and with some of the great programs that Darrell and his team have implemented under Measure M, have made Orange County really an amazing place to live. And I guess just to wrap things up, since being at TCA the 5 years here, I've been really happy to contribute to our agency's success, our rapid increase in usage, our growth in customers, and our reductions in costs that have made us really financially strong and allowed us to weather this storm we're currently all facing and lay out a clear path to manage our debt and minimize costs to our drivers.
That's fantastic. You have an amazing background. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I too am a transportation geek, and I love everything about intelligent transportation systems. And I think it is the area in transportation right now that's so transformative, and it's nice to know that you were there at the beginning of that. And you took over the CEO position at TCA at arguably one of the most difficult and challenging times for any business or government agency, and especially for a tolling agency that relies on traffic as a revenue source. What did you determine were TCA's immediate needs, and how did these shape your top priorities?
Yeah, we're definitely all experiencing some challenges, and for an agency like TCA, those challenges are significant. My focus coming into this leadership role were really around two big areas. One was that it was vital we protect our organizational health, both from a physical and mental perspective. We put policies in place to enforce social distancing and instituted regular communication with our staff through virtual on-hands meetings and email communication so that they stayed engaged. We wanted to make sure that our team knew that we valued their safety and the safety of our overall community, and also that the change in leadership was not a concern, but an opportunity for us to shine and show our board what we could really accomplish. It was also critical that we convey the board's message that they wanted us to execute proper care for our people, and that they had expressed optimism for our business. And that message also helped generate a lot of comfort and unity with our staff. The other big item I had to focus on was, of course, the stark reality of the economic impacts of combating the pandemic and the methods to flatten the curve for COVID-19. Our financial success and our debt management strategy have us on really solid ground, but the unknowns of this challenging time really warranted that we exercise an extremely conservative fiscal approach. So when I came in, we were nearly complete with our draft, our fiscal year 21 budget, but our board members, they worked with us hand in hand. They rolled up their sleeves to work with us on really tightening our belt. And our new budget for this year really reflects this conservative approach, focuses on core operating necessities while reducing operating and capital expenditures. Our resulting $290 million plus budget includes a reduction in those areas that is about 51% lower than the current year, but it allows us to meet our important financial obligations and to advance the board's priority projects, which include completing the Oso Parkway Bridge, and then working with our partners hand in hand, Darrell Johnson at OCTA, Ann Meyer at OCTA, and Ryan Chamberlain at Caltrans to advance the 24191 connector, which I think is going to be just an amazing regional project in coordination with the other great things we're doing in that corridor.
That's fantastic. businesses are realizing their employees can now work from home. We've heard several companies in the Silicon Valley now say that they're never coming back to work, and many companies are saying that their employees aren't coming back till 2021.
Yeah.
So what does that do to transportation in general, but more specifically tolling?
Yeah, this is really going to be an interesting story to watch and see how things really play out. I think a lot of us are still kind of guessing. Um, uh, and when it comes to tolling, it's a combination of things. Uh, Different industries may have different impacts or plans for teleworking, different occupations, and then also demographics along where toll facilities are located. It is hard for me to see a scenario where telecommuting doesn't continue, but part of that effect on tolling facilities will also be driven by some of the things that Darrell mentioned. What's going to happen with transit? So the big question for all of us is not really just what's going to happen with tolling or transit. It's what's going to happen with the overall transportation network. Try to rebalance that to make sure we can support everyone in getting to where they need to be for their livelihood and their families in an equitable manner.
That's excellent. Do you expect the tolling industry to become a bigger part of the transportation conversation? You're the president of that national group. You are involved in so many trade associations and leadership groups that discuss this. So what are your ideas for positioning the industry in the future?
Yeah, I absolutely think, and I won't just focus on tolling. I would speak to the broader concept of user finance transportation. I think that is just critical. I think we're seeing some very exciting and positively aggressive bills coming out of our in Washington, D.C. But my understanding is no one yet has figured out how we're going to pay for these great plans. We need infrastructure to support our quality of life, especially here in Orange County. We've been successful with that. So from a financial perspective, it's hard to ignore the potential for private investment and reduced tax burdens that user finance transportation and tolling provide. Those are significant opportunities that are important. And as some of the things you and I mentioned earlier, us transportation geeks look forward to, as vehicles move away from fossil-based fuels, our ability to generate revenue to not only construct, but to maintain what we already have in transportation is just going to be critical. And I think tolling and user finance transportation, in whatever form it takes, definitely has a future in that.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to ask you, as you know, the Orange County Forum hosted the Future of Race Relations a couple weeks ago. And I'm interested to know, as one of the leaders of an Orange County public agency, what are your thoughts regarding social justice?
It's an extremely important topic. And of course, I'm sure the audience recognizes me being a member of an underrepresented community, that I have my own personal thoughts. I am very pleased to see the overwhelming support globally around this movement. And there are a lot of opportunities there. I think key to that is really continuing the conversation. We have to continue to talk about these things, not sweep them under the rug, because through that conversation is where we gain understanding and education. And those things are key to addressing some of the unconscious biases that we have and providing a path forward that we all can benefit in an equitable manner and enjoy great things that this country has to offer.
Very well put. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to working with you and seeing you at a variety of us Transportation Geek meetings. And again, good luck in your role, and look forward to hearing all kinds of great things coming out of the TC. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Our last speaker today completes the equation of transportation in Orange County. It's Barry Rondinella, the director of John Wayne Airport. Barry, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I'm really glad we're including airports in this discussion because too often a lot of us just think of transportation as roads, trains, buses, and airports and aviation has a huge role. And you have been in aviation for a long time, and I was hoping you could share with us your impressive background.
Well, thank you. I think that's code for I'm a really old guy. But, you know, aviation is one of those things that sort of gets in your blood. I started off as a young man and got a pilot's license at about 19 years old and just never looked back. It was always about flying and aviation for me. Got a degree in aviation administration as well as commercial aviation and went on to fly in the Air Force, which was an absolute blast flying supersonic jets. You know, people will sometimes say, thank you for your service. And I think, you know, what do you mean? I got to go Mach 2 and blow stuff up. That was a good time. When I got out of the Air Force, I got into the airport executive career field, little airports, a little bit bigger airports, different roles, different responsibilities, most recently as director of operations at LAX. But I have to tell you, I have been looking at this particular job that I've sat in for the last 4.5 years for over a decade. So just pleased to be here, be part of the Orange County vibe and lead John Wayne, a best-in-class, world-class operation.
It truly is, and thank you for coming to Orange County. To frame our discussion, can we start with a brief summary of what the passenger statistics at the airport were, or the passenger statistics and the airport revenues were in May 2019 compared to May 2020? And I think that will give us a great picture of what's going on right now.
Yeah, great. In April, we were down 97.5% year over year. Saw some improvement in May, started getting closer to 90%. Currently, we're about 75% down. So while it's slow growth, it's measured growth. And we see the trend continuing. We were very saddened to see Disneyland's open pushed off because that will only enhance our ridership. But we are seeing the business folks come back. That's a big deal. Here at John Wayne, we're really fortunate in that we have a real good mix between leisure and business travelers. It's about 50-50. So as the business travelers come back, those numbers will increase even more. I have to tell you, walking through the terminals when we were 97.5% down was depressing. There were more employees in the terminals than there were guests. So it's nice to see some life there again. We're looking at another 20 flights coming in July, which means should equate with current load factors to about 1,600 passengers more daily. So just put this all in context. On a typical day before the apocalypse, we're looking at about 15,000 people through security. We were down to 300 to 500 on a daily basis. Yeah, so it was devastating. Currently, we're somewhere around 4,000 to 4,500. So it's starting to come back.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, so as aviation enters a post-pandemic world, what is the airport doing to bounce back, minimize costs, and make passengers as comfortable as possible? And I guess one way I'll key that up is I know that I haven't been to an airport in several months, and I'm pretty sure many of the people listening today haven't either. What are some of the changes we're going to be seeing, and what can we expect before we take our flight?
Absolutely. And that last thing, what are we doing to make it more comfortable for people to fly again? What you will see as you come into the airport is signage that reminds people to social distance, to wash their hands often. Please don't fly and come to work if you're sick. Those kinds of things. You'll hear an overhead announcement from our health officer talking about those same things. You'll see plexiglass shields at the ticket counters, at TSA, to protect both the guest as well as the employee working at the airport. Everybody that works here, you will see wearing a face mask, and almost everybody traveling are wearing face masks at this time. So what won't be different that you will see and you will notice right away, that hopefully you've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years, is every woman, every man in the terminals will be working very hard to make your experience better than at any other airport in the country.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And then just curious, and this might get a little technical, but how have operational needs evolved?
Yeah, it's very different. We had to close off both the extreme north and south ends of the terminals just because we didn't have that many passengers. We didn't have that many airplanes that were operating at the gates. We enhanced cleaning phenomenally. If something wasn't moving, we sterilized it and cleaned it. My goal to my employees, including my contract teams that do the cleaning, policing and firefighting, was that nobody is going to be furloughed, nobody's going to be laid off. We're going to see this thing through together. So the cleaning teams were busy at work just sterilizing everything they could possibly do. Very costly, but we have been very prudent in our finances over the past decade, and we've built a little bit of a reserve that we're relying on today to keep all those people employed, to keep enhancing our cleaning and sterilization for all of you. And the message I'd like to give you is we're ready for you to come back.
We're ready to fly. We're definitely ready for vacations, I'll tell you that. And are there any investments or expansion plans that are being suspended for the time being? And if so, when might we see them come back?
A great question. We've radically cut our budget in just about every way we can, except for personnel. We have put freezes on new hires, but as I said, everybody that was working is working today and will continue working through this critical time. We have put a number of capital improvements on the shelf, but we have gone through with some that are very intense in the passenger areas. No better time to get those done than when people aren't here.
Right.
So we are continuing with our improvements with the general aviation side of the house, the non-commercial side, which include airfield enhancements, new buildings, new business operators. We're expanding and creating a more safe environment in our rental car area. New painting, new striping, new signage, new lighting, new safety precautions, a very different environment, and really elevating the guest experience in our rental car area. So those are a couple things that we've gone forward on. Some of the things that you will notice as you come back, as well, is we have electrified more than 1,300 seats in the terminals, and that doesn't mean electric chairs. That means we are giving you places to plug your cell phone and your laptop in, so that you can recharge while you wait. You recharge your handhelds. We have enhanced the seating. We have put new carpet, and we've done a number of things that I think you'll notice right away when you come back.
That's fantastic. I can't wait. What was the impact on the airport with Uber, Lyft, and other ride-sharing services prior to the pandemic? And how do you see that changing now that many surveys that I've seen are showing that people are more comfortable just driving by themselves?
Yeah, so in 2017, 2018, even back in 2016, the rideshare component of the airport was just skyrocketing. It was logarithmic, the growth. In fact, it was detrimental a little bit on the rental cars, severely detrimental for taxi operations, as you can imagine. Our parking operations saw big drops as a result of people changing their habit pattern to use the rideshare option as opposed to the other options. That has grown to a significant halt, somewhat in touch with the passenger drops. But Sarah, I think you're right. I think people for at least a while will change their mode of operation to dropping mom and dad off at the airport, or maybe self-parking, feeling safer in their own automobile than in somebody else's. I do, though, expect that ride shares will make a pretty good comeback in the days to come.
Very interesting. Amongst everyone I talk to, John Wayne Airport is everyone's unequivocally favorite airport. So with the pandemic, might there be any long-term competitive advantages to John Wayne in terms of competing with Long Beach or LAX, Ontario?
Well, first, I'd love to hear what you started with. Every woman, every man here loves that. We all work very hard to make your experience here at John Wayne different than other places. You know, as an industry, we've pretty much wrung the fun out of flying, but flying is very cool. Parking structures and all of that, it's become a chore. Our goal here is to put the fun back into flying. So again, love to hear that. Thank you. Competitive advantage. Remember that John Wayne is a constrained airport. We have a settlement agreement with local communities, which caps us currently at 10.8 million passengers. Next year, we'll go up to 11.8. But our real demand before COVID-19 was around 16 million. So we always have more demand than we have supply. So what we've seen in the past is that we bounce back quicker from things like September 11th, things like the 2008 economic meltdown. And we anticipate it will be similar here. And that's because all of you, you like to fly. We have great business ties with other places in the country, other places in the world. So we do anticipate getting back to somewhat normal faster than other places. Just on a conference call with other California airports a couple of days ago, and we're about 75% down from where we used to be. San Francisco and LA are still at 90% down. Long Beach is 90% down. So we do anticipate a slightly faster growth back. Hopefully the whole industry comes back fairly quickly because we're all tied together, right? It's a national airspace system. And I don't care how many people live here. If there's no place to fly to, it's not going to do you any good. So we wish the best for LAX and Chicago and all the other places that are struggling to come back. But we do anticipate a competitive advantage to your question.
I agree. And just want to wrap this up with a feel-good story. You just won a national award for your Helping Hands program. Can you explain what that program is and brag a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love bragging about this. It's a very cool program. It's sort of a concierge program for those with cognitive disabilities. So it's basically a curb to gate, or actually to the airplane service, where someone with a cognitive disability such as autism spectrum disorder or Alzheimer's disease will get a little extra care and attention. We make yellow wristbands available for folks that need a little time and a little extra attention. And we have trained everybody throughout the terminal experience to be helpful and attentive to the folks with these special needs. A couple of years ago, it occurred to me that as an industry, we've done a lot to remove barriers for those that are physically disabled, but we didn't do anything. We were woefully inadequate in taking care of those folks with cognitive or unseen disabilities. And so as a team, we went hard to work to put together a program that was the best in the nation, I believe, for helping people that just need a little extra attention, a little extra time. And to get this award, it just, our theory is we do the right things and then the awards come along. And this was a perfect example. I can't tell you how proud I am of this team and the great work that they do each and every day. We really have a good group here.
Well, you have a lot to be proud of. I love the changes you've made to the airport since your tenure as director of the airport. And it is such a pleasurable experience to go to John Wayne as opposed to some of your competitors. I don't know if you call them competitors, but it's some of the other airports. And I want to just congratulate you and thank you for taking the time to come on the show. So really appreciate it. And I want to thank Darrell Johnson, Samuel Johnson, Barry Rondinella for leading Orange County into great mobility. You can't have a great community and economic, you just can't have an economy and a lifestyle without good mobility. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate these three leaders helping us with all that. So thank you very much, and hope everyone's enjoyed this hour. And if you aren't a sponsor of the Orange County Forum, please feel free to go to ocforum.org and we'd be happy to welcome you. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great day.